3 weeks later, Karen's kitchen had been transformed into a war room that would have impressed generals throughout history. Charts covered every surface, color-coded by violation type and severity. Red pins marked repeat offenders on a hand-drawn map of the neighborhood. A whiteboard displayed her compliance statistics in neat columns that showed a disturbing trend: 0% voluntary compliance, 100% escalated hostility. Her doorbell rang at exactly 3:00 p.m. She'd been expecting this. Karen opened the door to find 12 of her neighbors arranged in a semicircle on her lawn like an angry mob from a Gothic novel. Except instead of pitchforks, they carried manila folders and smartphones. "Karen," said Bob Henderson, who'd apparently been elected spokesperson by virtue of being the least likely to spontaneously combust from rage, "we need to talk." "Mr. Henderson," Karen replied, consulting her clipboard, "you're currently in violation of Municipal Code 847.3 for assembling without a permit on WVE property. That's a $75 fine, plus $25 for each additional person. Current total, $350. Mrs. Patterson, a 73-year-old retired librarian who'd lived in the neighborhood for 30 years, stepped forward. "Honey, you can't fine us for standing on a sidewalk." "Actually," Karen said, producing another laminated document, "this sidewalk falls within my property easement, according to the 1987 subdivision plat. I have the mineral rights too, in case anyone's thinking of digging." The crowd exchanged glances that could have melted steel. Bob cleared his throat. "Karen, we've all chipped in and hired a lawyer, Janet Morrison from Morrison, Klein and Associates. She says what you're doing is harassment and possibly illegal." Karen's smile could have cut diamonds. "I know Janet. She handled my divorce. Lovely woman. Terrible at property law." She paused for effect. "I, however, have been studying municipal code for 6 months and have identified 17 different legal precedents that support my authority here." "This is insane," muttered James Garcia, whose wind chimes had become the subject of a formal complaint to the City Noise Control Office. "What's insane?" Karen replied, her voice rising like a church organ hitting its highest notes, "is living in chaos. Do you see Mrs. Chen's garden?" She pointed dramatically. 3 different types of flowers. No color coordination. It's visual anarchy. Mrs. Chen, who spoke limited English but understood crazy in any language, threw her hands up. "My flower's beautiful." "Beauty is subjective," Karen declared. "Property values are not." Bob tried a different approach. "Karen, what do you actually want? What would make you stop this?" The question seemed to catch Karen off guard. For a moment, her mask of bureaucratic certainty slipped, revealing something that looked almost vulnerable. "I want," she began, then stopped. Her jaw tightened. "I want compliance with community standards that maintain neighborhood excellence." "That's not an answer," said Mrs. Patterson gently. "What do you really want?" Karen's eyes flashed. "I want people to follow the rules. I want order. I want—" She caught herself, seeming to realize she was on the verge of revealing something too personal. "I want you all off my property. Now." As the neighbors dispersed, muttering among themselves about lawyers and petitions, and possibly tar and feathers, Karen noticed something that made her stomach drop. Mrs. Chen had planted new flowers overnight, right along the property line. Bright, rebellious marigolds that seemed to glow with defiance. Karen pulled out her phone and called the city planning office. "Hi, this is Karen Whitmore from the Willowbrook Estates Enhancement District. I need to discuss expanding my jurisdiction radius to 300 feet. From her window, Mrs. Chen watched Karen pace her yard while talking animatedly into her phone and smiled. She'd been through the Cultural Revolution. She could handle one suburban tyrant. The war for Willowbrook was just beginning. Karen's empire began crumbling on a Tuesday morning when she discovered someone had installed a bird feeder shaped like a tiny middle finger directly across from her house. She was photographing this clear violation of Decorative Statute 12.7 when her phone rang. The caller ID made her hands shake. "County Legal Department. Ms. Whitmore, this is District Attorney Sarah Chen. We need to discuss your—" municipal activities. Karen's mouth went dry. Chen, as in Mrs. Chen, as in the woman whose marigolds had somehow multiplied overnight into what looked like a floral protest movement. I've done nothing illegal, Karen said, though her voice cracked like a teenager asking someone to prom. That's debatable. We've received 47 complaints about harassment, several reports of mail tampering, and one very concerning allegation that you've been conducting surveillance on minors. I was documenting sidewalk chalk violations. Those hopscotch squares were clearly over regulation size. The silence on the other end stretched like taffy. Ms. Whitmore, you need to cease all HOA activities immediately, or will be forced to pursue legal action. Karen hung up and stared at her kingdom, all 1/3 of an acre of it. Her perfectly maintained lawn, her color-coordinated flower beds, her regulation-height mailbox standing at attention like a good soldier. She'd won. She'd created the perfect HOA where every rule would be followed, every violation noted, every standard maintained. So why did she feel like she was drowning? Her doorbell rang. This time it was just Mrs. Patterson, holding a plate of cookies and wearing an expression Karen couldn't quite read. "May I come in, dear?" Against her better judgment, Karen stepped aside. Mrs. Patterson looked around at the violation charts, the color-coded maps, the towers of printed municipal codes. My goodness, this must have taken months. 6 months, Karen said quietly, plus the 3 months before that researching legal precedents. Why? The simple question hit Karen like a physical blow. She sank onto her couch, suddenly looking smaller than her 5'2" frame. Because my last HOA board told me I was too intense for community involvement. They banned me from meetings, said I was disruptive to neighborhood harmony. Mrs. Patterson sat beside her. So you decided to create your own neighborhood to control. I just wanted things to be perfect, Karen whispered. I wanted to live somewhere where people cared about standards, where things weren't falling apart all the time. Like your marriage? Karen's head snapped up. How did you? Small neighborhood, dear. We all saw the moving truck, heard the shouting. So you come home alone. Karen's eyes filled with tears she'd been holding back for months. He said I was impossible to live with, said I couldn't let anything just be. Mrs. Patterson handed her a cookie. These are from my non-regulation garden. Mrs. Chen brought me the oranges, James gave me honey from his beehives, and Bob's wife contributed the walnuts. All violations according to your codes. Karen bit into the cookie despite herself. It was perfect. You know what's funny? Mrs. Patterson continued. We were all strangers before you started this HOA business. Your violations brought us together. We're planning a block party next weekend. That'll require permits, Karen said automatically, then caught herself. Sorry, habit. You're invited, of course, on one condition. What's that? Mrs. Patterson smiled. Bring cookies. Any kind you want. No regulations. As Mrs. Patterson left, Karen sat alone in her war room, surrounded by the architecture of her loneliness. She picked up her phone, and after a long moment, began deleting photos of violations. Outside her window, Mrs. Chen was planting more marigolds, their bright faces turned toward the sun like tiny golden rebels. Karen watched for a moment, then opened her laptop. Willowbrook Estates Enhancement District Dissolution Paperwork, she typed into the search bar. But as she scrolled through the legal documents, she noticed something that made her pause, a loophole she'd missed, a way to maintain just enough authority to. Karen closed the laptop and looked at her reflection in the blank screen. Some habits, she realized, die harder than others. The marigolds seemed to be multiplying. Karen Whitmore stood on her perfectly manicured lawn at 6:47 am, wielding a measuring tape like a sword, screaming at the mailman who had committed the unforgivable sin of stepping 3 inches onto her grass. That's a $50 fine according to Section 4.2b of the Willowbrook Estates Community Guidelines, she shrieked, waving a laminated document that caught the morning sun like a beacon of bureaucratic fury. The mailman, Eric, stopped mid-stride and stared. Ma'am, there is no HOA here. This is just a regular neighborhood. Karen's eye twitched. Not anymore. What Derek didn't know What none of her neighbors knew yet was that Karen had spent the previous 6 months in a legal rabbit hole deeper than Alice's Wonderland. After her last HOA dispute in her previous neighborhood ended with her being banned from board meetings, Karen had done the unthinkable. She'd purchased the one undeveloped lot in Willowbrook Estates and incorporated it as its own micro HOA with herself as the sole member and president. You see, she continued, her voice taking on the tone of a kindergarten teacher, explaining gravity to particularly slow children, my property now constitutes the Willowbrook Estates Enhancement District, and according to Municipal Code 847.3, I have the authority to enforce community standards within a 200-foot radius of any HOA property boundary. Derek blinked. That can't be legal. Oh, but it is. Karen produced her phone and showed him a stamped document from the county clerk's office. Incorporation papers, filed and approved 3 weeks ago. I even have my own flag. She pointed to a small flagpole in her yard, displaying a banner that read, HUBET, where Willowbrook Excellence dwells in Comic Sans font, a choice that would have horrified her if she possessed any self-awareness. Derek set down his mailbag. Lady, you can't just create an HOA to boss around people who never agreed to join one. Can't I? Karen's smile was the kind usually reserved for villains in Disney movies. I've already issued 17 violations this week. Mrs. Henderson's garden gnome is 2.3 inches too tall according to decorative statute limitations. The Johnson's American flag isn't regulation size. And don't get me started on the Garcia's wind chimes. Clearly a noise ordinance violation. None of those people agreed to your rules. They don't have to agree. They just have to comply. Karen's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow felt more threatening than her shouting. Because I've done my homework, Derek. Property easements, municipal ordinances, homeowner liability clauses. There are more legal loopholes in this county than Swiss cheese has holes. Derek picked up his bag and started backing away. You're crazy. I'm thorough. Karen called after him. And tell Mrs. Patterson her garbage can was still visible from the street at 7:15 a.m. yesterday. That's a violation. As Derek hurried away, Karen surveyed her domain with the satisfaction of Napoleon, reviewing his troops. Her phone buzzed with the first angry call of the day, probably Mrs. Henderson, about the garden gnome citation she'd found taped to her front door. Karen answered with a professional voice that belonged in a customer service training video. Willowbrook Estates Enhancement District, President Whitmore speaking. How may I maintain excellence in your life today? The screaming that erupted from her phone could have powered a small wind turbine. Karen smiled and pulled out her violation notebook. Mrs. Henderson was about to learn about the noise ordinance too.